Welcome to this edition of the Hoel Roofing and Remodeling Podcast. Today, my special guest is Kourtney Zahn with Brick Ember Outfitters.
Brick and Ember.
There you go. So, Kourtney, take a minute to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your family and your business, please.
Yeah. So, started my business in 2011. We've had a few reiterations of our name, but it's presently Brick and Ember Outfitters. We do fireplace, chimney, and masonry restoration work. And married to my wife, Faith, for about 22 years. And 4 kids, Bristol, Quinn, Shepherd, and Story.
How old are the kiddos?
13, 11, and then 9-year-old twins.
Nice.
Yep.
So you decided with twins you better stop after that?
Yeah, I wanted 5, but after the twins, that was a deal breaker. And it about killed us. Like, I can only imagine my wife, but I mean, I can't imagine I was there.
Right.
But it was challenging. Way harder than starting a business or anything else I've ever done. Like, having a 3 and a 5-year-old and then twins was wild.
I've got friends, Evan, that we just did a podcast with. He has twins. I think they actually turned 3 today. I seen his wife posted that, and they had a daughter, and then a set of twins, then another kiddo. I'm pretty sure they had another boy. Now I feel like
we couldn't risk like another set of twins.
Right.
Like, I think that would have killed us. So we decided to take care of that.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
So, what I try to do sometimes with the podcast is just bring in other small businesses. For us, we have a working relationship. You literally just knocked out a job for us, helping us with the Dairy Twist over in Connorsville, and I know you just did some other work on a house that we did some work on that we referred you guys to. Yeah. So I guess I just want to let you kind of share, your story about your business. And, what I've always noticed is it always involves family and it always involves our kids and, that kind of stuff.
It does, yeah. Well, if at any point in time you want me to dive into something a little bit deeper, just stop me and let me know. But yeah, so I started the business in 2011 and it was out of necessity. So I never intended to be a business owner. Actually, a couple of years prior to starting the business, my wife was like, "Oh, you should start." Because I worked for another company that did similar work. So I was a low-level kind of production supervisor. And my main goal at that point in time was to be a full-time pastor.
Okay.
But I was doing masonry restoration supervisory work full-time for a living, and she's like, "Oh, you should start your own business." I said, "Absolutely not. No interest." Well, I decided we just bought a house. We had our first son that was just born. He's 13 now, so started the business in 2011. So he's probably about a year old. And I decided it's a whole separate podcast, talk about stepping away from ministry and then pursuing just a full-time job. But at that point in time, I knew I had to do something that could put food on the table. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have a college degree, don't have a college degree, and the only thing that I know is, I said, hypothetically, I'm a pretty darn good brick mason, because it's not this, I'm not a brick mason. I don't necessarily do the work, but when you see the work being done enough, you could probably be pretty clumsy, but get it done. So that's kind of what I fell back on, decided to start a fireplace chimney masonry company. So in 2011, I was a part-time youth pastor for a church. I stacked fruit at the local fresh market and then started my business. So that's how I started in 2011. And it really stemmed from needing to figure out a way to take care of my family. So when I left my job, I was making $14 an hour. And they offered me a production manager position, I think making like $35,000 a year, which really wasn't a big enough jump in the right direction. So I had to figure it out. And I thought starting a business was the best way of doing it.
Yep, no better way than just head first.
Yeah. One person told me that. They said, "Kourtney, working for you is kind of like starting to build an airplane and pushing it off the cliff before it's built." And so, which I think is a pretty fair assessment, But you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I mean, me and Emily's. There's been a couple things pop up this week. They're like, "All right, we got to address that. Like, we need to put that in writing. Like, it's never been in writing before, but it's now it needs to." So,
sure.
Let's talk a little bit about full-time ministry and that kind of stuff, because I feel like there's this weird culture vibe thing where, like, you can't talk religion and politics, or you're not supposed to. And then there's that weird kind of stigma that you can't be a full-time minister. Like, there's nothing wrong with the way you conduct business or the way I conduct business or the way you treat your employees. I mean, like, you're a minister. Like, you could be ministering to people there that will never step foot in a church.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, when I was 17 years old, I had a come to Jesus moment. So, got in trouble with the law, broke into some buildings, stole some stuff. And it was kind of weird because I grew up in a Christian home, and I was, for the most part, a pretty good kid. It's just one of those moments where you're like, what just happened? Right. I actually came off of being a church camp counselor the weeks prior, and then I just found myself like just being a stupid kid in a small town, making a bad decision. Came home from jail that night and just kind of had this aha moment to where in that moment I felt the most loved by God. Mm-hmm. At my lowest point, felt the most loved by God. So I think in that moment I felt the grace of God where he loved me despite who I was or what I had done. And that really changed my life. And so I wanted other people to know about that. So that's where I pursued youth ministry and then pursued pastoral ministry and then planning a church. And that got me all the way up until I was about 30 years old. Okay. And that's where I decided to then step away from formal ministry and then pursue business, while acknowledging that, to your point, there's a lot of opportunity to serve people by way of being involved in your work, in your craft, and then being a blessing to people, serving people well, treating everybody in a way that they all have value and deserve respect, which isn't always the case in a small business, in the construction world. So treating all those men and women with respect has been something that we've, I think, tried hard to do, and I think for the most part we've done that pretty well.
Well, and I'll never forget, when I started in this business, the company I was working for, we had like a door knocking blitz in the morning, and whatever team got the most self-generated leads, we got won something. Well, I mean, I'm in sales, I'm competitive, Sure. So I remember it was a neighborhood in Noblesville. Like, I could drive you to this house, and I mean, there's shingles missing everywhere. It's like a 15, 16-year-old roof. Like, it's a slam dunk for a roofing guy. Like, insurance will buy that every day of the week. You get the customer a new roof for the cost of their deductible. It's a win-win. And so I went up, knocked on the door. Nobody answered. And I think I went to hang a flyer, and somebody pulled in, and it was the family. And, I watched them get out, and it was the family coming back from a doctor's appointment, and I believe the husband had cancer, and it was bad. And I completely like shut down as a salesperson, and I was just like, I see you have a lot bigger fish to fry. I know your roof is shot. Here's my card if I can help you out. Like, not even pushing you, Yeah. And she texted me later that night or the next day and was like, "Are you a Christian?" And I was like, "I am." And she was, "I could tell there was something way different about you than any other roofing sales rep that's ever knocked my door." Mm-hmm. And she's like, "I'll be honest, I don't have my money for my deductible, and we can't afford our bills to go up anymore. So I'm just afraid if we file a claim, A, I can't pay my deductible, B, we can't afford a larger premium for our insurance." And like, I just knew did they need help? Absolutely. But, and I never heard from the lady again. I don't know what happened in that situation, but I read that and I was like, okay, like, I'm doing what is right here. Like, mm-hmm. Did I make any money? No. Could I? Yes. So it's just, it's a different approach. And, but like I said, I feel like some people want to kind of stigmatize, oh, you're not holy enough, if you aren't in full-time ministry, or if you were one time, you can't go back, Sure. to the world, like, you're going to burn in hell, for doing that kind of thing. Right. So,
yeah. I think it's a really unique opportunity. I'd also say it's a doing ministry when you have the title and you're inside a church, I think in so many ways it simplifies it, right? Because everybody expects something, good and bad. When you're in a work environment, there's a lot of different ways of looking at things. There's expectations that are there because there's a service on the line, there's pay on the line, there's expectation of a customer, expectation of employee, expectation of myself, while trying to carry yourself in a way that honors all of those things. And it's about near impossible to always treat everybody in a way that they would feel serves them the best.
Right.
It's challenging. But I do believe it's what God has called us to. God doesn't call us to kind of put our faith over here, in our business over here. Whether we like it or not, it's blended more than what we like,
right.
What we want to admit.
Well, I say to be a small business owner, you got to have some kind of crazy faith.
That's absolutely true. That is true. Yeah.
IRS and,
yeah,
supply chain issues like we've dealt with for how many years that we're still blaming on COVID.
That's right.
Yeah. So what, now, and we've had this conversation before. Were you born around here?
Yeah. Northern Indiana.
Okay.
So I was born in Northern Indiana, a little town called Wanata.
Okay.
In an area called the Region, so close to like Michigan City, Valparaiso.
Okay.
And then I moved to Crawfordsville, Indiana, when I was about 13.
Okay.
So.
And now you're pretty much in Indy, right?
Yeah, we've been in Indy for, 15 years.
Okay.
And then we live on the southeast side of Indy.
Okay. Yeah. Now, is your wife involved much in the business?
She's not involved, and she never really has been for the most part. The first year, she helped me figure out my schedule.
Yep.
So we went from one customer to like 100 customers overnight, and then it never stopped,
right.
Which is an interesting story in itself. But she helped me kind of make sense of it.
Okay.
So back in the day when there was, I suppose there still is, but Living Social, Groupon, Angie's List had a thing called a big deal.
Okay.
And so I did a big deal with Angie's List. And I did a Groupon and a Living Social, and I did this thing called 3 hours of labor for $99. And I wasn't even a business really, right? Because I didn't have customers. Didn't even have a truck. Didn't have a ladder. So chimney guy, no truck, no ladder. Started a business throughout this deal. Woke up the next morning with an inbox full of 100 people that had bought the deal.
Oh, shit.
So literally 100 paying customers. First appointment, I take my wife's minivan. I'm like, this doesn't work. Drain my savings of $300, buy a ladder, and go out there and start selling jobs like I've been doing it for 10 years. I've never even done sales before. And that jumpstarted our business. The first year we did, I think, $600,000 or $700,000.
Wow.
And never looked back. Once I took that first appointment, which was a realty appointment, we just never stopped.
Right.
So.
No, that's.
Yeah, so my wife helped me in that first year, just kind of routing out my appointments, like kind of making the most efficient loop on going on the appointments. And then we had my son, and then we had my daughter Quinny, and then she pretty much has been a full-time mom.
Nice.
For the most part.
Well, and that's such an important piece that's another thing of a weird culture vibe. I feel like I keep going back to weird culture vibes, but it's, and I kind of feel like stay-at-home moms now people are finally giving them more respect here in the last 4, 5, 6 years. I don't know. I felt like 5, 10 years ago, maybe it was like, oh, your wife's a stay-at-home mom.
Sure.
Like, my poor wife, that's what our agreement was, 13 years ago when we got married. And so fortunately we've got somebody hired and relieving her some of her duties so she can make sure that she's being a mom also.
Yeah, my wife told me, she said, if you took what a mom does and you put it in some type of like a salary, like she should get paid like $180,000 a year.
Oh, I believe it.
So someone did the math, when you think about like budgeting and, CFO work and project management, and all those things, right?
Well, and I mean, they're so busy, and they're so much tougher than we are.
Yeah.
Like you said, you don't know how she had twins. Like, thank God we don't have to have kids, because this world would end real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, like I said, it's just, it's a lot, and it's, the spouse has to support the other one, on, however that is. I mean, our first year in business, our youngest one was a few months old. So like, she was a mom of, a newborn, and then what would have been Reagan would have been 2, and Rhett would have been 4. So, I mean,
yeah,
we know how all, crazy times,
That's crazy.
That is. So, what other, I mean, like, I guess I always ask, like, tell your best customer story, funny or most going to pull your hair out kind of thing, or,
Well, I guess it depends who listens to this podcast and what I want to say, right? But early in business, we used to have this, since we were big on Angie's List early on, we used to joke about having a K list.
Yeah.
So my name's Kourtney, it starts with K. But we say that customer's been K listed, which means don't go back there, right? Contractors can look at the list and find out which customer not to go to, right?
There really should be a list for that.
Yeah. If you're a customer of mine, I'm not talking about you. Right? But I mean, I don't know if customers, a favorite customer, or what was the question again?
Just a unique story, like something funny or something that you just wanted, to. I mean, like, one of my favorite ones was a claim in Greensburg, with it was a hail damage claim, and this lady, Sue Ricky, I love her to pieces. She still calls me. We just mess with each other all the time. But she, when her agent actually came out to her adjuster meeting, which I'd never had an agent do that, and that Greensburg got smoked with hail in like 2017. Like, it was. The insurance companies were just pretty much showing up writing checks. Like, there wasn't much inspection to do. And somehow her flip-flop ended up on top of her roof while the adjuster was there. And I was like, sir, I think she's trying to create damage or something like that.
Sure.
And in our world, there's a lot of that, unfortunately. And then I'll never forget, she was an IU fan. And she had a little step thing, whatever you call them, stepping stones, on her front.
Yeah.
And I was like, ma'am, I told the adjuster, I was like, we're going to have to get hazard waste removal fee on that, because, it's IU, and, just something funny. Like I said, it was just, I mean, we've all had them customers that you want to do business with again. I guess maybe we should stay focused on the positive and, a good customer that you want to do business with.
I have a story of she's a good customer. She just, she has a lot of cats.
Yeah.
So she has a lot of cats, so that makes for an interesting situation. Things are rusting that shouldn't be rusting because cats like to do what they do. But my salesmen probably have a lot better stories than me.
Right.
I honestly feel like with everything that goes on in a small business, it's hard for me to lock in on one specific story of a customer. But I do hear a lot from my other team members of situations that happen. So, gosh, I think I'm drawing a blank, without talking poorly of a.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't want to, I mean, I've got stories going in my mind that I shouldn't repeat on air. So, okay, then I guess just share a success story or a memorable experience with the customer, maybe some kind of give back you've done that, got to bless somebody or something like that.
One of the gentlemen that used to work for me, he had a soft heart. Cut that one out. Soft heart, and he was always wanting me to do something for free. Right. He actually been in pastoral ministry as well in the past, and so there was always situations where we've actually had a situation where one of the family members had just died, and they wanted to, in memory of their dad, they wanted to have this fireplace working. And so I remember doing what we could to get their fireplace working on behalf of their family. And so, we've fixed people's chimneys because they needed a new roof. Mm-hmm. They needed their chimney fixed because it was leaking. And, we've done things for free that way. Because sometimes you just go to someone's house and you're like, I just know it's not in the cards, right. But they got a real situation, right? And we've all been in this scenario where you just, ends aren't meeting,
yep.
And you need help. And it just is what it is, right? I think a lot of businesses, it's just, you step away from that situation, but when it's a scenario that you can't do every one of them, but there's been a handful that we've been able to. And it usually stems from one of my salesmen bringing this situation to my attention, right. And saying, hey, can we do something?
Right.
And and they're like, I won't get paid. Let's just, what can we do?
Right.
And so there's been a handful of times that we've done that. And that's really highlighting my team.
Yep.
But really, it's good to be able to do that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Last year we went and helped the Indiana FFA Center in Trafalgar, and a kind of similar story. Uh-huh. My sales rep called me and was like, hey, there's a lot of gutters here. I don't need a commission on this. How can we help them out?
Yep.
So I just flipped it into a team building day.
Sure.
And I just called them and said, what color do you need? And fortunately, my gutter sub, he showed up with him and his helper, and a team in which we had the state FFA officers helping us, our team, and then two of my gutter subs labor. We tore down and put about 2,600 linear feet of gutters and downspouts up.
Wow.
But I just said, okay, to Ray and his helper, I was like, you guys are really knowing what you're doing the best. So I was like, we can do the tear down and not mess that up, and mm-hmm. that was a long day, but it was good. There was, I even took my kids out of school. I was like, you kids are going to go watch this. You're going to help. To me, something like that is very important for them to see, because, the worst part about us is there's people we want to help all the time, but we've also got an obligation to pay our bills.
That's right.
To pay our help, and,
That's right.
So that's always, that's always a tricky point, because you don't want to become known as the roofer that does everything for free, or the brick company that does everything for free.
Yeah, we did a home for Habitat for Humanity a couple of years ago, and I laid the brick wall on the front, got some good pictures, and then my brick mason tore it down and relaid it. It's like, we cannot keep that there. So, it was pretty good for my one and only time of laying a brick wall.
So what'd you do wrong that your bricklayer didn't like?
It's just it just had a little bit of a wave in it, right? And it was a good photo op,
right?
But just not something that you want to put your name on, that's for sure.
So it's always funny, because when everybody thinks that, some people don't understand, you're a lot better business person than you are a bricklayer.
Yeah.
And, not that you can't be a good bricklayer and a good business person.
Sure.
However, I always say I'm just better at hiring people that are a hell of a lot smarter than me.
Yep.
To do what needs done. So.
Well, and that's an interesting part of the business early on as well, is that I think what we bring to the table is a little bit unique, in that some people's value is that the owner knows the craft,
right,
did the craft for years, and then started a business based off of that. I see the value that we bring is that as an owner, I hadn't done the craft, but I've brought people that were older than me that have done it a lot longer. And then what I brought to the table was the ability to give a good customer experience by way of interacting with them from a management standpoint as well as sales, and then giving our brick masons, just any team member, giving them respect, and then letting them know that they have a lot of just intrinsic value because they are a person. And when people enjoy where they work, when they know that they're respected and cared for, they give the best work to your customer as well. Right. And so the value that I brought to the table was kind of being the liaison between the two, working with the customer, working with the guys doing the work. Whereas if I was the one head down doing the work, I always say it's kind of difficult to provide the kind of customer service that I want when I'm required to then step in and do this one task. So I could give a better experience, I believe, overall to our customers by way of not being the guy, but being one of the team members that can help with customer experience, team experience, which I think brought a unique approach to business early on for us. Because most people grew up, maybe their dad was a brick mason and they grew up doing it, whereas that wasn't the story for me. Dad was actually a roofer, general contractor. So that's a unique way of starting a business. It's not always the case. But.
Well, and like something that we've ran into, me being from Rushville, being in a small town, like early on people were offended that it wasn't me that came out there.
Sure.
And I was just like, guys, if you want me out there, it's going to take me at least 3 weeks to get out there. You may have an estimate in 6 weeks.
Sure.
Like, if I send a guy out, he'll be out in a day or two, and he'll have an estimate within a day or two, of that. So, fortunately, people, they're understanding.
Yeah. So you're saying you're kind of a big deal.
No. I'm just a peon. I'm just here to make sure the check's clear.
That's right. That's right.
Make sure you cover. But one thing that I've noticed is like also with the team is like to make sure they realize that Adam's job in marketing and doing the social media stuff is just as important as the roofer putting it on, Absolutely. And I also want the team to understand the value and the hard work that our crews do every single freaking day because we could sell a bunch of jobs and, get a bunch of likes on Facebook, but if we don't get them installed, we're not going to be in business for that long, So that's a balancing act, especially I feel like in the trades, because sometimes I just feel like sometimes in trades, like we get that attitude of like, well, a sales rep's more important than the production team. No, not really, So,
well, that's an interesting dynamic of business, right? Like sales versus production.
Yeah,
it's there's no way of getting around it.
Yep.
But if you can create a culture that has a healthy respect for both, and you got to try really hard to make that happen. But that is a hard dynamic.
Try being the sales manager and having your wife be the production manager. So it's always it's either the sales guy's fault or the production guy's fault.
Yeah, I can't.
And the buck stops with me when it comes to sales. So that's why we hired a guy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, and I've worked for other companies that the production and sales genuinely just hated each other. And I've just said it from the get-go. I'm like, guys, that's not going to,
there has to be a respect for each other, and they have to see the value. Like, there's no work for you to do if they don't do the sell, and it's like, and vice versa, right? Like, if we don't have the guys doing the work, then it's like, what's the point in selling it?
Yeah. And I mean, fortunately, we've got a good team that understands that, and what I've learned a lot is just people taking responsibility. Like, if the sales rep messes up on finding something or not taking a layer picture and realize there's 4 layers of shingles and one's wood shake and we got to redeck the whole house. Like, then the morning of, like, we're running to get OSB, so.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
You're not saying that from experience, are you?
No, not at all.
Not at all. I didn't think so.
Yeah, we had a job. The last one I remember it happens to, we was doing a job in Tipton. So that was real nice.
That's how it works, the ones that are far away.
Yeah. And it was like, I was like, we got our picture for that? No, I just assumed. I'm like, yeah, that's what we get, for assuming. So, what? I knew I was gonna have to cough during this once, so my apologies. What else do you do? You kind of mentioned customer experience, but what else do you do to stand out? In the brick, in your market, to attract your ideal customer.
Yeah. Well, we put a lot of value on, when I say customer experience, at the end of the day, it's a lot of I'm the oldest guy. I'm not the oldest guy. I used to be the oldest guy in the company, right? So a lot of us are younger.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my salesmen are younger. And so at the end of the day, we just don't have, we've been doing this for the last 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't have that on our side. But what we do is we make up for that by way of caring and being really curious. And so on the sales side of things, we just really do a great job of asking the right questions, helping understand what the customer's problem is, and what's really the main motivation to getting that problem fixed. And a lot of times the problems are obvious, right? Like, for a roofer, like wind damage or the shingles are missing, right? So for us, it's like, bricks in your landscape bed. So it's kind of obvious on the problem, or something is leaking, or smoke's coming into my house. But they don't really know all the time, like, why they want to fix that, or what do they want the end result to be. It's not always really clean cut as to like what the actual fix is. There's a lot of different things we can do, because one thing with a chimney or masonry, it's typically out of sight, out of mind. And so by the time you recognize something as a problem, it's probably been a problem for a long time. Right. You're just now noticing it. And so for us to ask the right questions and to understand like little things like, are you going to be here for the next 20 years? Did you just buy the house and is this your lifelong house? Or have you been here for a handful of years and you're home for 3 to 5 years? Or what is the situation? All of those types of questions help us kind of craft what is the right repair for our customer. And I think that's a huge value, because though I'm not a brick mason, though I've never been the guy that's done the installs on fireplaces, I do know a lot about them. And I've seen it done a lot, and I am fairly competent to speak into what we do. And to be able to ask the right questions and have our sales team and just our production team as a whole think about what does the customer need is super helpful. And it's easy, just as a person who knows how to do something, you can just go in there and be like, well, here's your problem, you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Well, yeah, but if you would have asked some better questions, right, maybe you would have learned that isn't necessarily the thing that's helping them. So it's just being curious and not coming in with your preconceived idea as to what they want, like asking them questions to understand what it is they want, and then kind of crafting that repair that meets their needs.
So when we talk about your business, like what are your I don't want to say bread and butter. What mainly do you focus on?
Well, I would say restoration work on chimneys is a lot of what we do.
So when you say restoration, like is that taking the brick off, putting new on, or how's that work?
So it's anything related to the chimney. So a chimney can have brick on it, can have stone on it, it can have siding on it.
Okay.
If it's a chimney, we take care of it.
Okay.
And so anything that is any kind of structure that is venting exhaust to a fireplace, we take care of. And oftentimes everything that's above the roof line, it's just out of sight, out of mind. People don't think about it. People don't do a good job of having their chimney inspected or swept on a yearly basis, and so you don't know what the problems are. And it's kind of like you don't know that you have a roof problem until there's a leak that's inside your home. You don't know you have a chimney problem until there's something that shows up inside your home. And so I would say our bread and butter, or what we do a really good job at, is determining what is the problem and then what is the right repair. There's a handful of factors, right? Like a right repair has to do with like, well, what is your budget? Like if I sell you like, well, you got to do this, it's like, well, that's not in the cards. It's like going to a mechanic and saying like, I only got enough money for 2 tires, not 4.
Right.
Well, maybe that's what you need to get down the road. And that's an option for us, right? So helping customers with chimneys, so whether it's joints that need to be tuck pointed, grinding out mortar, putting new mortar in, replacing individual bricks, or partially tearing down a chimney, rebuilding it. The cap on the top of a chimney, we call it a crown. That's kind of like a roof to your home. Yep. It's a roof to the chimney. That is the thing that typically starts all the deterioration below. So if you have a crack or if you have a flat mortar wash, it's just letting moisture in. It's been doing it from day one. Those are all things that cause problems below. And so we do a lot of work on that. During the fireplace season, when it's cold outside, we do a lot of work on just making sure your fireplace is functional. So most of our salesmen are all chimney sweep certified. So we're out there sweeping chimneys and making sure they're clean. And then from that, you do an inspection on the chimney, do an inspection on the inside of the flue system. We do a lot of repairs there. Okay. But good old-fashioned brick replacement and tuck pointing. Okay. Do a lot of that.
Yeah. So you just rebuilt, I guess, a wall and a half for us. And then Yeah, so, and you also just did a job that we did the roof a couple blocks south here. I think that was a chimney.
So there was a chimney on it, and then there was a full masonry home.
Okay.
And I mean, I think that house was probably built in the 1900s. We're working on a house right now in Franklin, Indiana. It was built in the late 1800s.
Wow.
So it's a full masonry home. So the walls are three rows thick of brick. And so doing a lot of, I think on the house outside of Rushville here, I think I had over 5,000 joints that we ground out, put new mortar in.
Wow.
Rebuilt a front pillar, poured a little foundation to reset the pillar on. And then the one in Franklin, it's a house that's getting 100% remodeled, gutted from the inside, fully restored. I think it's one of the first houses in Franklin, actually. The family that developed Franklin started, it was one of their homes.
Oh, wow.
Early on. So it's kind of cool to be part of those.
Right, right.
So yeah, thousands of mortar joints, grinding it out, putting new mortar in, replacing broken brick. Kind of
nothing.
It is dusty. It ain't pretty.
Right.
You know, it's kind of but it's what we do.
Well, it's funny because when you're working on that one outside of Rushville that we're doing we did the roof last year. We're doing some interior stuff now. You're like, yeah, you've probably seen the dust from your office. So.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of dust.
Yep.
So,
okay. What else can is there any other way that you serve customers that, whoever's listening to this, can, because I mean, my entire intent of this is like get you in front of our customers. Like, I want this to eventually, hopefully one day you're like, I remember watching you on that podcast. And that's why, we called you up. So, I like talking life. I like talking stories, but at the end of the day, I want it to be worth your time and your investment of sitting down, so anything else that you want to share with the audience of work. I mean, are you guys considering, are you kind of staying the path that you're on? Are you looking at expand anything new, anything like that?
Well, even though we do fireplace, chimney, and masonry, and it seems like those all go together. I was just talking to one of my salesmen about this, that sometimes you have things in a business that would be a little bit like a loss leader, right? Mm-hmm. You do it because it's kind of tied to the other things that you do. And it's necessary. So we fix this because it's tied to this, and it's one big package deal. So a fireplace is attached to a chimney. A lot of chimneys have masonry. Mm-hmm. If you can work on masonry on a chimney, then you can easily work on masonry on the wall of a home or a knee wall at a customer's property or anything like that. And so, we're pretty dead set on that, pretty dead set on doing those three things really well. And so everything from the functionality of your fireplace, and that includes wood stoves, gas inserts, a lot of gas logs, and then just traditional wood-burning fireplaces. Nice.
And what area, what's your traditional area that you cover?
So typically we're just about an hour and a half outside of downtown Indy is what we've typically done. We do go a little bit further than that at times, but generally speaking, that's where we go. Okay. So hour and a half from downtown Indy, which gets us pretty far out there.
Yeah, no, and and I know how that ends up because you're an hour and 15 minutes this way with one crew, and another crew's an hour and 20 the other way.
But if you think about it, even if you're like, if you're in Noblesville,
right,
and then you're going to like Center Grove,
right,
that's the equivalent of like going to Ohio,
right.
Depending on where you're at. We've even done some work in Ohio, right. It's just like, well, if you're willing to go here,
right,
it's like it's only 20 more minutes.
Well, and that's like, so I was born in Camden, Ohio area, which is pretty much due east of here. So Eaton, Ohio, still got family, still got people that know me over there, and we've actually done a few jobs over into that area lately, and it's from referrals or, literally one guy called me and said, hey, will you go, I've got a cousin in Eaton, Ohio, will you go fix his chimney flashing? I was like, yeah, that's fine. So I went over there, and the guy was gone on vacation, and I get there, and he said he had rotted OSB. We had 3 layers of shingles on the roof, and I was like, I called him, and I said, all right, I feel bad making this phone call while you're on vacation. Right. You've never met me, but I was like, you need a new roof. And I explained why. He goes, I kind of expected you to tell me that. I'm like, okay. So I gave him a price. He signed a contract, never met the guy. I had done, his cousin referred me, and I had done his house. I'd done like 3 or 4 family members' houses by this point. And I was like, so we go over there. I go over there. I didn't even collect the deposit. And I went over there the first day. The crew was working, and half the crew was sick, so they just tore off the back half, did the back half. And I called them. I was like, hey, I just want to give you an update. We got over here today. They got the back half completely done. I said, crew's sick this week or today, so they only did the back half. He's like, well, I'm 5 minutes from home if you'll wait. And I was like, oh, absolutely. So I'm sitting there talking to him. He pays me. The neighbor pulls in. Hey, where'd you find this roofer guy at? And I'm standing right there, and he's like, oh, I said, he's done some work for my family. He's like, can you do mine? And he just had a small like pool house that needed a roof. And this guy was like this guy was in his 60s, and he had built it by himself, but he made it like a 10-12 or 12-12. And after he looked at it, he's like, I'm not touching it. And I said, if we can do it tomorrow, it's $500. If we come back, it's $1,000. And he's like, why? And I was like, because my guys are literally a 1/10 of a mile away, And so I get like you get out there. I've got a commercial contact that we do some work over in Dayton on some apartment complexes and
it always works out. You do one job in an area, and then before you know it, it's just like you find yourself kind of coming back to that area more often.
Yep. Anything else you want to add? Any more wisdom?
Gosh, wisdom. No, I mean, we could go on. I could go on like a rant about a handful of things, but
yeah. So I guess one thing, if you're missions minded, what is there a particular thing you do as a company as a give back, or like, does your family support this missionary because that pulls at your heart? Or
sure. Yeah, actually we do. We my family, we support a handful of missionaries, but we've kind of partnered with the business as well, and we've done some support on Homes of Hope is a ministry that I love.
Okay.
As well as another organization called ICM. They build churches around the world, and so build churches in a lot of areas where there's not churches, or it's small villages. It's hard to get to. They build churches there, and they really get the gospel out to the locals. But I have a good friend, Cipriano. He builds homes for people in Mexico.
Okay.
And he's a missionary. He's also from Mexico. And I've taken my family there a handful of times. We've built some houses, and we've paid for that and built houses, and I love doing that. We also have a handful of Hispanics that work for us, so I love the fact that we can serve them here, and they serve our customers, and we're also going over to Mexico, building homes for families that are. It's just amazing, like the quality of the people, their situation. They're very like high-spirited people, but yet they're living in. I mean, my girls yesterday took a bunch of pallets at our office, and they built a fort out of it with tarps. And as I sit here and think about it, like that's what they're living in.
Right.
And my girls are just having fun.
Right.
And we're building homes for people that are probably less elaborate than the garages that we have or a shed that we have, but it's like a mansion for them.
Right.
And so to get to be able to do that is awesome.
So now you say that, literally we're building a house as we speak, and they're out painting it today and yesterday. And I went out there, and there's this little Hispanic girl out there painting, and she's got her earbuds in, and you could probably hear her if you stepped outside right now. Like she was singing her little heart out.
I love
and
that.
Like I didn't understand the word, but like I just looked up, and I've been sick for 4 days, and I just had a big grin on my face. I'm like, man, here she is freaking just, she's so happy right now. And as a culture, we're so depressed and sad, and and we have houses for our vehicles, like And me and my wife went to Haiti on a mission trip. I've been twice; she was once, and it was crazy. We tore down a building that had gotten damaged 5 years before that by an earthquake, and the locals were like taking the full blocks from that building and taking them back to add on to their houses. And, and like you said, like they have so little compared to us, but they're so much happier and, way more content and thankful.
Yeah. It's, I bring my kids there because it's just hard to grow up and to not be somewhat entitled, right? Like, I feel really blessed, you know, in so many ways. I get to live the American dream, and it's not. I didn't grow up the way my kids are growing up, but I want them to be somewhat sober-minded as to what they have versus what other people have, and what we have isn't even real. It's not realistic for the majority of the world, and so how to have a bigger perspective than just like what has been given to us. How do we think broader than that?
Right.
And I'd love to do a better job at it. I mean,
well, and it's like as parents, we want to give our kids more than we had, but I think we're both on the same page where we don't want to give them too much, you know, either. Yeah. Now, do you have any girls?
2 girls, 2 boys.
Okay.
Yeah.
And especially for my girls. Now, my boy, I'll make that little son of a gun earn everything.
Yeah, well,
I love them. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. But especially my little girls, like, you know, if they want something, all they got to do is ask daddy. But, you know, and I even feel like, and my wife was kind of tell the same story. When we went to Haiti, like, we felt like our parents did a good job raising us to appreciate what we have. But it was just, you know, our cultural shock when you just go there and there's this trash in the streets everywhere, and just, you know, I mean, it's just, we're so freaking spoiled, you know, in this country. And, you know, so much opportunity, and so wasteful as a country. And, you know, and then again, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with having nice things. There's nothing wrong with having a nice house, you know, where some people think that, you know, maybe you shouldn't, but I'm just saying, you know, so I think we share a lot of similarities, you know, in that.
Yeah.
And how old were your kids how old were the youngest ones when you took them the first time?
So actually, my 2 youngest ones haven't gone yet.
Okay.
My son has gone 3 times. My daughter has gone twice. My older daughter has gone twice. My wife actually hasn't gone.
Okay.
So, but I think I've gone 3 or 4 times. Maybe.
Okay.
So it's one of my favorite things to do.
Right.
To be honest. So.
Do you have a trip planned?
So we don't have a trip planned. We've been kind of on the fence as to whether or not we should go this year.
Okay.
And we haven't kind of made the decision yet. So.
When do you is there a certain time of the year you go?
So what we have gone, I have a family that lives in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
And we have went with their church a handful of times.
Okay.
And so they typically go in November.
Okay.
And so we've always gone in November. But one of the, Paulie, who works with me, him and his family are going in June.
Okay.
They built a house last year, and they're going as a family this year in June to go.
So what church out in Denver?
What church out in Greenwood Community Church.
Okay.
Greenwood in Denver, Colorado.
Yeah. Not in the okay.
Yep.
I was just curious. There's a church out there called Flatirons that I listened to some of their podcasts, and I was going to be like, no freaking way if that happens to be the same one.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Make for a better story. Huh?
Yeah. But all right, well, we appreciate your time coming in here. Is there anything else you want to add to the audience? Any words of advice, anything like that?
I don't think so. You know, if you're listening, we obviously appreciate customers' business. You know, appreciate guys like yourself that refer people to us, and being able to have B2B business partners is awesome.
Yep.
So I'm really thankful for that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
just want to thank you for tuning into this episode of the Whole Roofing and Remodeling Podcast. And if Kourtney can help you out with anything, please reach out to him. I believe he's helped us with 2 or 3 projects in-house, and then, like I said, we referred him to several that I know. So it's always fun for me to pull up and see our sign in the yard and your guys' sign. So thank you guys, and have a great day.
Thank you.